Today we are doing something which I think is absolutely fascinating. This is based on a study done by Rook and Talbot that was published years ago in the Harvard Business Review. It's called The 7 Transformations of Leadership, and it was the results of a 25-year project where they surveyed 40,000 executives, managers, and professionals across all sectors: profit, non-profit, government, private sector. And what they found is what differentiated leaders was not personal philosophies, personalities, management styles, but their action logic. Now, what the hell is an action logic? So action logics can be defined as how a person in a leadership position interpret their own and others' behavior and how they maintain power or protect themselves against threats. So in other words, it's a mindset that influences how that person understands the world, makes decisions, responds to challenge, interacts and communicates with others, and exercises leaderships. Now, what is really important is they found that these mindsets evolve over time. So bottom line, this thing about the person is a born leader is absolute bullshit. Okay, it's absolute nonsense. But let's talk about these 7 action logics they found. Remember, 40,000 people, 25 years. First was the opportunists, right? So what is their action logic? How do they view the world? Basically, they look at the world and say, I must win at all costs. It's a mindset of what's in it for me. So they are competitive and manipulative. They see the world as a hostile environment, which is just a win-lose scenario. And they really have very limited strengths. Basically, they're good in an emergency. So in other words, if the restaurant catches fire, you want to be behind them because they're going to make it through that door and trample over all the old ladies in the way. Their weaknesses are basically they trust no one and they do not cooperate. So the reality is you don't really want to work for them. But we do love voting for them. So how do they see other people? They see other people as tools or obstacles. So you're either a threat for them or they're somebody that they can exploit or dominate to help them achieve their goals. If you criticize them, they see it as a personal attack. And in leadership positions, they lack strategic vision and they ruthlessly exploit their position for personal gain. Right, so these are the people who use the corporate credit card for flying their friends on overseas trips and things like that. Right, next category they identified with the diplomats. Now the diplomats, the way they look at the world is they say, listen, let's not upset anybody. Not the people below us and not the people above us. Right, we must all live in harmony. So they don't want confrontation. They want approval, and they want to stick to the rules, and they say, let's not rock the boat. Okay? They've got some strengths. They're really good at bringing the group together, and they are typically the people sort of social glue in a group. They make sure everybody gets recognized. They make sure of pointing out when it's somebody's birthday. Their weaknesses is they will not speak truth to power, and they will not give any negative feedback to people that they manage. And they really can't make decisions on their own, right? They need to get consensus on everything. So they're going to be very uncomfortable about criticism because they seek approval and harmony. And their view about other people is really they want approval and they want to fit in, and they will really avoid conflict, and rather, if they think this is going to be an uncomfortable meeting, they'll just rather be sick that day. So they're really not good in senior leadership roles, unless you need a diplomat, right? But they're great in junior management roles because they are that team member who keeps the team together. The next group they identified are the experts. So the experts try to control their world by perfecting their knowledge, right? Both in their professional and their personal level. So they're very detail-orientated and analytic and use logic and data to achieve consensus. They're obviously very strong technical people. These are your engineers, your doctors, your lawyers, all these professional categories. They like clear structures and procedures. Strengths, they're very efficient problem solvers, and they're great individual contributors. Weaknesses, they're very critical and rigid. You know, it's in a leadership position, it's my way or the highway. They struggle with big picture thinking because they're specialized in an area, and they're not great on collaboration. One of their famous quotes is, "Not all meetings are a waste of time, some are cancelled." How do they see other people? Well, they measure all people against their area of expertise. And that's where the problem comes in. If you are not in their area of expertise, and they consider you to be a lesser qualified person, then they treat your opinions with contempt. So they don't react well to feedback, right? If it's criticism, they will react aggressively if they think you're questioning their competence, and they will only accept criticism from acknowledged masters in their discipline. In senior leadership positions, as I said earlier, they're great as individual contributors, but they completely lack and have no interest whatsoever in developing emotional intelligence. And that is a prerequisite for senior leadership positions. So they really don't care about the emotions and feelings of the people that they lead. And as I said, you know, their interaction with anybody else who's got a different skill set or comes from a different discipline than their own, and they consider them to be inferior, would be to just treat that opinion with disdain. So what makes experts very dangerous in management positions is if they don't have management competency, or if they aren't trained to be managers. You take a person who, in their individual capacity as an expert, normally has a huge body of knowledge and lots of confidence, and you now move them into an area where they've got no knowledge, but they still have the confidence. And that, of course, is a toxic combination of arrogance and ignorance. And you can think for yourself what the impact is. We're now moving to a next group, which were called the achievers. Now, unlike the other people, the achievers' worldview is much more complex. What they realize is that a lot of the conflict in everyday life, so within teams, within an organization, are that people differ in how they interpret situations. And that in order to resolve these issues, you need to be sensitive to the relationships, to these different interpretations, and you also need to be able to influence people in a positive way. So typically they are very result-driven, they're ambitious, they're strategic thinkers, and they've got a very strong work ethic. So their strength is this goal orientation and their ability to drive performance in a team, because they can work with all these different views in the team and they can get them to focus on a single goal and they can drive to meet that goal. their weaknesses are. They might neglect team development and well-being. They can be over-focused on short-term goals, and they really don't like thinking outside of the box. It's all about keeping our eye on the prize. We know where we're going, and let's get to that point. How do they view other people? They view them as contributors to achieving success in the goal, and they understand the importance of teamwork. And how do they react to feedback? Right? They're very open and take it very seriously because they see it as an opportunity for improvement. In terms of senior leadership, they play a really critical role in any leadership team as long as we work within the existing framework. Okay? Their problem, however, is that they are so focused on operational success, and incremental improvement is that they maintain the status quo rather than leading transformational change. So it is playing within the rules, playing within the SOPs, and if we're going to improve things, it's really going to be with small little steps. So let's move on to another group, the individualists. Now, the individualists have even a more evolved understanding of the world. In essence, they realize that these action logics, the way people see the world, are not natural. It's not something people are born with. They realize they are all social constructs, and that they are adaptable and evolving constructs shaped by social interaction and cultural context. So they therefore believe that every person within their organization has got a unique perspective, and very importantly, that everybody can contribute to the organization's development. So their action logic enables them to question established norms and embrace diverse viewpoints. So in other words, they really don't believe that there is a set of rules for the organization, that there is a way we do things, right? They master communication with colleagues who have different action logic. So they're very comfortable working with the experts. Although those experts might see them as lesser qualified, they understand how experts think and say, it's okay, I can work with that guy. And they're very strong, and that's why they're called individuals, about encouraging autonomy and innovation. They encourage people who they work with to think outside of the box. So what sets them apart from the achievers is their awareness that there's always a conflict between what an organization's values and strategies and regulations are and the implementation of those. So remember, achievers, our previous group, believe in operating within existing structures. So they don't like out-of-the-box thinking. The individualists understand that although there are these structures, sometimes what the organization wants to achieve requires you to create structures to resolve those gaps between strategy and performance. So they're inclined to ignore rules and procedures that they view as irrelevant. So unlike the opportunist at the beginning who didn't think rules applied to them at all, these guys say, I understand why the rules are there, but sometimes the rules just doesn't make sense. Not if we want to achieve this. So let's just bend them a bit. So they often operate on the basis of it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. And this obviously can irritate their colleagues and their bosses. We now get to another group called the strategists. Now, the strategists believe that every aspect of their organization is open for discussion and change. Now, their action logic enables them to challenge perceptions held by other people with other action logics, especially when they believe that those action logics constrain their organization and that challenge is necessary to overcome resistance to change. Remember, the previous group, the individualists, believe that everybody's action logic has got something to contribute. Strategists are able to not only challenge, but they can create compelling shared visions and lead the pragmatic initiatives needed to create those visions. So they work to create ethical principles and practice beyond their organizational interests. So they usually have highly social conscious businesses that are carried out in a collaborative manner. So in other words, they can get people to change their action logic so that they all collaborate together. And they are typically fascinated by personal relationships, organizational relationships, and national and international developments. Learning, what's really important is that you appreciate that all people are different. Now, I earlier referred to cognitive biases, so we're going to give you some additional resources where you can watch a series of videos on cognitive biases. Now I'm going to come to the last of the action logics that they found. And these are alchemists. So alchemists build on the skills of the strategists, but they have a deep and unique understanding that not only does every person have their own action logic, but they also have their own reality. So they understand that reality is not fixed, but it's experienced different by each individual. So there's not one reality in the world, there's 8 billion different realities. And somehow their unique way of making sense of the world influences their leadership approach by allowing them to generate social transformation. So they're able to renew and reinvent themselves and their organization in historically significant ways. So they've got this extraordinary ability to simultaneously deal with situations at multiple levels, go from high strategy to low operational issues at the same time, communicate comfortably with kings and with commoners, and deal with short-term priorities without losing sight of long-term goals. And they're typically involved with multiple organizations on a daily basis. So these are charismatic, extremely aware individuals that live by high moral standards and they focus on the truth. So there aren't very many of them that have been studied, and there are very few that fall into this category. And it really is this emphasis on the very high moral standards and the focus on the truth. So this brings us to the end of the 7 transformations of leadership. So you've now seen that there are 7 action leaderships. In a following talk, we will have a look at the so what around this question. Thank you for your time.